Welcome to the Voice of the Agent mid-year review. I'm delighted today to be joined by some of our editorial panel to discuss the research we've done so far this year with the Voice of the Agent. So I'm delighted to be joined by Claire Yates, Christopher Watkin, Danny Nash, and representing our brilliant hosts, the best video company in the UK, PBS Media, that will be Chris England.
Very kind.
Now you owe me a favour.
Of course.
Excellent stuff. So I'm going to start with a question for all of you, and then I'll go around the panel with individual questions. But before we begin, I suspect some people will be asking the obvious question. The Voice of the Agent is supposed to represent agents, yet there isn't actually a single practicing estate agent or letting agent on this panel. Why? Danny?
I think the report is called The Voice of the Agent, and ultimately is the voice of the agent. It is their responses to the questions that we ask. And what we are is we are the interpreters of that data. And individually, we're subject matter experts in our own areas. And between us, I think, we work with hundreds of agents, and what that enables us to do, as an agent, you end up in your own echo chamber, I think. And the stuff you're doing is working. It's then very hard to kind of see how you can change it, how you can improve it. And I think what we bring is, because we work with hundreds of agents between us, we're able to bring best practice, look at what the agents are saying, and then come up with ideas and solutions based on the interpretation of that data.
I love that answer. I'm actually going to steal it. So, just around the table, Claire, how many agents do you deal with in a typical year, or have you dealt with?
Oh gosh, I deal with at least 30 estate agency companies a year and about 40 law firms.
Brilliant. Christopher?
Over 100.
You're saying hundreds?
Hundreds.
Chris?
Yeah, over 10 years, 100.
So I think the point you're making, which is perfectly done, is, we do research to get the most impartial and representative view of estate agents and letting agents that we can. And what we're going to do in the next half an hour, 45 minutes, is discuss what they say. But of course, we're always welcome to take more feedback from estate agents. And that's why we'd love you to fill the surveys in when we do send them out. So my first question was about part one back in January, sales and lettings. I'm going to ask this question to you, Claire. Have estate agents simply spent the last 2 years blaming the market when the real problem is they're simply not winning enough instructions? To give you a moment on that one, while you think about that, properties under £500,000 accounted for 3/4 of instructions, but less than half of fee income. Meanwhile, most estate agents cited winning instructions as their biggest challenge. So are they blaming the market, or that it's them?
I'm afraid they've always blamed the market. I've been in the industry for a very long time, over 30 years. And when I started out in agency, I was always told that the competition were overvaluing and dropping their fees. And surprise, surprise, in 2026, we've got exactly the same problem. The simple fact is that we can't look inwards to have the answer to the market problems. We have to look outwards. And agents don't spend money on training when times are hard. They only spend money on training when they've got money in the bank, which is frequently too late. So the market has always been the market. There's some brilliant data that tells you what people want to buy, and some brilliant data that will tell you what will sell shit quickly. So we have to just look and say, is there any of this common sense? But if your staff are not commercially aware and they don't understand the value of valuation and they don't understand how much a viewing costs, then they'll just become busy fools chasing the wrong business and sending you very quickly back to the bank for more money.
Brilliant. Christopher, Stato Watkin.
I just want to go back to the previous question, and sometimes the best view of the circus is from outside the tent.
I'm having both of these answers, guys. Thank you very much. Could we cut these bits, because I'm using both of these answers?
And isn't it interesting that estate agents, when the market is good, take the praise, and when the market is not so good, they blame the market.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always like to do as Stato is when someone complains that they're having a bad month, I actually go in and analyze their town, and 8 times out of 10, Simon, they're having the bad week or bad month, not the market.
Yeah, that is interesting. We see that in the data. Is the experience in the report is the range of people who are still having a great time and they were having a bad time, despite the fact the market's the market.
The
market's the market. Yeah, exactly. And actually, that lends me to my next question, which I'll like to carry on with. Is what we did notice in the research is prime agents are reporting weaker trading conditions than the wider industry. Now, for years, the industry's treated prime agency as the promised land. Is the data exposing that as kind of a myth, Christopher?
When it comes to properties, anything over £2 million, probably it only has a 1 in 5 chance of selling. Anything under 200,000 has like a 4 out of 5 chance selling, and everything in between. Now, if you speak with the likes of Ian White, he says a property that's £1 million should be just as sellable as one that's 500,000, that's one that's 250. Is there an element of estate agents overcooking the posh houses? I mean, is there an element of, well, it looks good on my books? Ultimately, a property's worth what someone's prepared to pay for it. And I think there's too many estate agents out there that are so fixated on winning the listing as opposed to selling the house. And until you get fixated on actually getting the house sold, it doesn't really matter what prices sell for. I mean, when it comes, well, I think we're going to be going on to talk about prime. All prime is just a nice address with posher curtains, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a great line I heard, I think it was Kate Faulkner, or it could be you, Christopher, is there's no property market, there's a market for properties, for a property.
That might be Kate. That's not
Yeah,
mine.
that's a really good line. So you deal more with the operational side of agencies. I'm curious from your perspective, when you talk to agencies, do you think it's the market problem or is it an agent problem when it comes to how they're performing?
Well, what you've got to judge. What are you judging? What performance?
Let's take the most obvious one. Financially, are they feeling flush or are they not feeling flush? Is it because the market is down, or is it because, as Claire says, they haven't trained their team to be commercial? And from your perspective, are they just operationally inefficient?
I think there's a lot of factors at play. I think, obviously what Claire said is accurate. I think it depends on your perception of what a prime property is. I live in the southeast. It's where I was born. It's where my family have lived for generations. The perception of £1 million house in Surrey is very, very different to the perception of £1 million house in other parts of the country. £1 million in Surrey or in London or any of the home counties doesn't actually get you very much. So I would suggest that, properties there have a much higher chance of selling because you could be looking at a 4-bed detached house. It's nothing special. And that's not showing off, it's not being flash, it's just a statement of fact. I think a lot of things come into play. I think discipline is a massive issue. So a lot of the business owners that we deal with are willing to spend money training or getting consultants in or paying for marketing or filming. So they have a very different mindset. But what they absolutely have to do is maintain the discipline that mindset gives them through the good times and the tough times. Don't negotiate on your fee. I've had it where I've had estate agents round and then negotiating against themselves before I've even raised an objection. And I think if you believe in the service that you provide and you believe in your team, you shouldn't negotiate on your fee because you should be able to sell the benefits of using your agency. And I think the other place that they're missing a trick as well is absolutely squeezing the lemon on a transaction. So, they win the valuation and that's worth a fee. But actually, what are you leaving on the table with regards to conveyancing fees, referral fees, those sorts of things? And it's not selling to your client. If you've built great relationships with conveyancers and FS people or removals companies, recommending them is going to make the sale and the transaction process as seamless as it can for your client. The fact that you make a bit of money on the side is a bonus. So don't leave it on the table.
Brilliant. So Chris, you work with a lot of estate agents. You will feel how the market is actually reacting based on the people that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Do you think this market, you've been PVS now for 10 years?
10 years next year, yeah.
So 10 years in the business, so you've seen a lot of cycles with the business over the last decade. Does this feel like a peculiarly difficult market relative to where we've been in the past?
It's an interesting market now. When you think about really tough times in the market, you just go back to the 2008 crash when I actually became an accidental landlord, and you've got a really interesting sort of mix there. There are lots of kind of interesting factors around the geopolitical climate. For example, development. We were supposed to start a podcast in January with some developers that got pushed because Strait of Hormuz got closed. So you have got some interesting geopolitical factors that are influencing the broader market. From a lettings perspective, you've got renters reform, which is obviously in some cases forcing landlords out, which is adding more properties to the market, which is making more stock available, and people who typically would have been able to buy would have bought. So you have got that kind of, I guess, more properties on the market, and they're obviously not selling quite as well. I think where the best agents are excelling is in their mindset around growth and in marketing. So, I actually pulled out of the report, that in real terms, only 2% of growth agents can't account for their marketing investment. And those, and if you know where your money is being spent, then you can sort of see your return on investment. I think the best agents at the moment are doubling down on marketing spend, and they're doubling down on their investment into client acquisition and business growth, whereas some of the the weaker agents are actually seeing that as a something they must cut, they must get away from. But what we're not saying is you must spend large proportions of money on high investment marketing. Can you sweat some of your existing asset? Can you add value with some low cost AI solution, which I know we're going to come on to in a bit? So I think where agents are winning is in not withdrawing from the market and putting their head in the sand and actually going, right, okay, well, what can we still do? How can we still be highly visible in a difficult climate?
Brilliant. Coming to you, Claire. Obviously, you straddled the market of both conveyancing and agency. You must see the market from both sides. Are conveyancers struggling at the moment with the market? Do they feel this is a particularly bad market for conveyancers?
No, I would say not. In
Right.
fact, the best conveyancers, in many cases, are actually turning away work. And there is a push back against referral fees where the market is telling them that to do a good job, they will sell at higher fees anyway. But we do have a problem in that it's been so stressful for conveyancers. The 15% are leaving the industry every year. And so we have to look at this and say, realistically, fees have got to go up across the board. We've got to, if we're great salespeople, we have to persuade our clients to spend money on a solicitor that's going to do the transfers, and that they should spend more money on a solicitor than a three-piece suite. We also should explain to people that we should spend money on estate agents that will help them to move. But we don't. We keep talking about how cheaply we can do things instead of how expensively they should pay for it. And if we're not salespeople, what are we doing?
I love that. And actually, just to build on that point, Christopher, just to come to you, is there is no evidence, in fact, the opposite evidence exists, that the worst thing you can do, so the worst thing you can do if you're a home seller is get the highest valuation and the lowest fee. That will not give you the best result.
I mean, let's just look at some stats there. Of all the houses that have come on the market in 2026, which are now sold subject to contract, 80% of them didn't have a price reduction.
Okay.
Of all the houses that have sold in the last 2 years, 70% of them didn't have a price reduction. With regard to the fees, because we have dumbed down our servicing and we are rubbish ourselves as estate agents at marketing, and I tell you what, there's one person, the one group of people who are even worse at marketing themselves is conveyancers. They've basically prostituted themselves on the altar of cheap fees and these conveyancing firms that packaging. When you've got a conveyancing where 50% of the fee is going to the estate agent because they're so rubbish at marketing themselves and getting a high fee themselves, no wonder they have to have them factory conveyancers. Until we realise, and we as estate agents can prove our worth and show that getting a good solicitor is the difference between getting the house you moved and not, then we deserve everything we get, because we are truly atrocious at marketing ourselves, truly atrocious at proving our worth, and we deserve this until we buck our ideas up.
There's a great line from Red Adair, which is, if you think hiring a professional expensive, wait till you hire an amateur. And I think that's really true. It's worth paying the right amount of money for the expert to help you, both agent and conveyancer, to get the best possible outcome.
See, the same is true of both businesses, but it's more important with a conveyancer. A conveyancer is going to get you from A to B, and you need them to spend time on your transaction. As an agent, you want them to spend time on the transaction, and as an agent, you want them to do it as quickly as possible because it's your cash flow.
Yeah.
Now, the price you pay a lawyer, the legal fee, dictates how many clients they're going to need in a year.
So right.
So if you start to take that fee downwards or start to burgle some of that fee, all you've done is cheat yourself and probably lost a transaction. So I actually say to people, the price you pay dictates the length of time it's going to take for your call to be answered and your email responded to.
I love that.
It's interesting though, isn't it, that you're effectively trying to negotiate, to get the cheapest possible price. And I think agents, are under the cosh with this a lot, where, this is the most important transaction you will do. And yet you go to a pub and you order a round of drinks, you don't sweat the bill, or you go, you go on holiday and you just sort of accept that that's the fee. I think the biggest problem fundamentally is in displaying value, demonstrating value. And the agents that are winning, the agents that are growth agents, the agents that are, you know, in whatever this prime market looks like, depending on where you are in the UK, the agents that seem to be winning are the ones that are adequately displaying and showcasing their true value and their true worth. And therefore, they're demanding fees of a higher caliber, which is allowing them the flexibility in a tougher market to market and double down there. So I think it's interesting, just the mindset of consumer, that we're trying to hammer that price down on something that's vitally important for our move.
On that as well, sorry. Property Academy does the Home Moving Trend Survey every year. It's done it for 18 years. Interviews people that have sold within the last 12 months. And it gets like between 8 and 12,000 responses. So it's robust. And every single year for 18 years, it shows that people do not choose the agent that offered them the lowest fee, and they do not choose the agent that offered them the highest price. So I think they're cleverer than they are given credit for. And I also think it's quite interesting with agents that, you know, again, we've all bought and sold properties. You get 3 rounds to do the valuation. Who else have you had round? You answer the question, what are they going to charge you? Oh, we can undercut them. So you think they're creating the perception of low fees within their own negotiations as well. So I think that needs to stop, because actually, you know, if they were like, well, we charge 1.8% and this is why, then the consumer has a choice to make. But the minute they start competing on fee, they're just making it worse for the whole market.
So I compare estate agency and travel agency all the time, because when you go into a travel agent, they say, where do you want to go? When do you want to go? And how much you want to spend? And we do the same. But this is the most expensive journey of our lives, involving eye-watering fees. Most people will spend extra on fast passes. Most people will spend extra on priority boarding. Most people will spend extra to go and do 5-star. In fact, the travel agent didn't die in the 90s. They've grown into a luxury model where people will pay to have designer holidays. We're just leaving this whole thing behind. We have to educate our clients that we're the right people. We have to show that the care that we do in organising that journey matters, and that everybody that's sorting out and attending to them on that trip matters. And we've got to stop this whole idea that anybody can do it.
So you won't like, because I'm just conscious of time and we've got a number of questions to go through. I want to make sure we get this in the time so people can get through all these questions and not spend, we can spend 5 hours with us if you want. But let me force it. I know you won't like a binary answer, but if a business is struggling out there at the moment, is it more likely to be the market or the agent? In a word, Chris?
Agent.
Agent.
100% agent.
Agent.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the first chapter. We're going through part 2 in a moment, but I think the key thing to remember is there's no real property market. There's a market for a property. Whatever's going, what you really want to go for is not a fair market share, but an unfair market share. And I'd strongly suggest talking to some of the people on this panel, talk about their expertise and work out what it could be that you could be doing better to change your business.